What's up, puppy? You all right? It's all right. Good boy. Yeah. What's up, punk? You all right? Oh, man. Come on. Just want to carve a little bit. What's up, Kobe? Hmm. Whew. What do you think, Kobe? Whew. All right. What's up, Kobe? All right. Okay. You can't really see that carving. Hmm. Sacred Sunday. Pardon me. Okay. Actually, let me get that carving. Here. This is the carving for the stablecoin super cycle. Okay. This is the one. Right? The Ouroboros. Okay. This is the Ouroboros. Okay. Whew. That's the Ouroboros totem. And that makes it the USDX totem. And everything that's amazing about Ouroboros protocol and ORX token, which is a fee sharing token, and USDX, which is the first collateral backed asset of its kind. It's what I call a floating stable. It floats up and down and right. USDX and Ouroboros is a fork. At least the stablecoin part of it is a fork of the Liquidity protocol, right? So, okay, I wrote a few things down. I just want to talk about this idea of the stablecoin, the Genius Act in the U.S. I'm not your lawyer. I'm not your, advisor, but I am my own lawyer. And so I'm going to pay attention to the Genius Act. It's not a Genius Act. Anytime a piece of legislation labels itself, like, you really got to look under the hood. I can tell you what it is and I can tell you what it isn't, first of all. And then I want to talk about ORX, the platform, and this idea of collateral-backed stables. I'm calling them collateral-backed floating assets, right? So I want to talk about ORX and USDX and yield-bearing stables versus payment stables, which is something that the quote-unquote Genius Act did. It distinguished what it's going to pay attention to and what it's not, and that's a tell. Then I want to talk about USDX and this idea of scaling stablecoins and how Ouroboros does that. I also want to talk a little bit about pDAI. pDAI, not as a stable coin, because it's not. If it becomes a stable coin and it becomes some form of a stable asset, fine. But right now, pDAI is a speculative play, and I like it as a speculative play. I like, the idea that, yeah. So there's pDAI, and then I want to talk about two assets, EROS and Bear, that I have that I'm pairing with, not with stables, but with pDAI. So, okay. The Genius Act, for anybody that cares, okay? There's two things in it that I think are relevant to me and to anyone else who's interested in decentralized finance. The first is it pays attention only to what, I'm going to call it stable coins that relate with the payment rails, that are for payment, that are part of the payment system. So that's what they are talking about, okay? And there's a reason why they're talking about that, because it impacts everything else, the centralized finance, payment paradigms. And the fear is, typically these things are driven by fear. The fear is that whatever's going on in crypto and with all these stable coins, there's like two things we need to get right. One is protect the payment rails and the relative stability of those rails, so that people know that if you're paying in dollars, it's worth $1, right? That's just, the US dollar system trying to stay relevant. And so the Genius Act is protective of the status quo, in that they're basically saying, if you're relating with the payment rails, we're going to regulate. We are going to regulate you under the Genius Act if it passes. So that's the first one. So my recommendation to self and others is stay away from payment rails, which is why you start hearing founders who had been, I was listening to a crypto founder, and I don't want to name him, but he's really smart, very capable, very successful. And they've been talking about being an issuer of stable coins. And they were like, we're not even thinking about being an issuer anymore. And so when someone says that, it means that you're going to then be the target of the regulation. If you're an issuer of stable coins and you're connected to the payment rails. And then the second thing of the Genius Act is basically this idea of proof of reserves. And the question is it backed by anything or is it just fluff? Right. And if it is backed by something, what is it? Show us, right? And so that's the second thing of the Genius Act. So that's the thing. Like people in the Ouroboros chat are asking the developer and those of us who have some experience with this, like, how does it impact Ouroboros and USDX? And like the easy answer is it doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't mean that it doesn't, like, it won't relate to it. Like there will be some regulation about collateral, fully on-chain collateral-backed assets, but yeah. So that's the thing, is that it doesn't affect it, and in some ways we get the benefit of it as a USDX holder, as an Ouroboros holder. We get the benefit of all of the attention given to stable coins. And so the question is why? Why all this attention to stable coins? And I do want to talk about that. For like, I didn't understand the value of stable coins when I first came into crypto in 2017. My brother said to me, he's like, bro, just make sure you understand stable coins. And I was like, why? I don't get it. Isn't this a speculative asset? And he said, yes. He said, you'll understand the value of stable coins when you experience the volatility of these very early stage financial instruments or quasi-financial instruments, like this whole idea of programmable money and printing money. And so, yeah. And so he said to me, you'll get it. And it did take me a few years to understand how to use stable coins and how to use stable assets and which ones are actually stable and which are high risk. And, how do you know? So, yeah. So what I would say is that depending on where you live, relate with stable coins that are in good graces, at least for right now, until there can be a fully on-chain financial experience. Relate with stable coins that are in good graces of the regulators. And so where I am in the US, that means USDC, right? At least for now, is in good graces, right? Circle is in good graces now. It wasn't always that way. It might have been a target. It's not a target now. That doesn't mean it will never be a target. It is part of the risk of these centralized stable coins where the regulators are, and the market is asking for where's the dollar backing, or if it's not dollar backing, where's the proof of the reserves that give the asset value, and that basically if something goes wrong, people can get paid back. And so there is a consumer protection thread in this. I don't really feel protected as the ultimate consumer, but I'm not here to debate whether or not it protects consumers or not. I can tell you that all of the centralized financial players like Celsius and FTX and others, at least for the investors, there was a quasi-legal process to try to get repaid, right? But for me, that's why I don't invest in these centralized exchanges or centralized, DeFi. I don't experience that as DeFi. I'm looking for fully on-chain experience, right? It's why, for example, a red flag for me comes up when people start talking about centralized exchanges, especially around stable coins. And I know that centralized exchanges is where a lot of the volume is, a lot of the market is, a lot of retail is. But in terms of the integrity of a system and being able to audit fully on-chain finance, like this is the thing. So, okay, so Genius Act, proof of reserves, is it there? Let's talk about ORX now. ORX, Ouroboros Protocol, is uh, a suite of smart contracts on the blockchain, right? There's the principal part of it currently, though it's going to expand around it with a staking platform and other yield-bearing opportunities. But the core of the protocol is a smart contract that allows me, I'm going to use TitanX because there's two collateral assets in Ouroboros right now. One is TitanX and one is DragonX. Eventually, as Ouroboros scales beyond the incubator of TitanX, TitanX has been a great incubator for Ouroboros. It gave Ouroboros the developer Shadowy. It gave Shadowy the opportunity to relate with the community, to build a protocol using two collateral assets that many of the people in the community were holding, and that's TitanX and DragonX. So right now, I'm going to use TitanX. What the protocol does is I can place my TitanX into the smart contract and borrow, basically mint USDX, right? Now, there's all kinds of protocol parameters that are built into the smart contract to keep a healthy ecosystem. And Ouroboros is designed for small and mid-cap assets like TitanX and DragonX, right? And it will extend beyond that to bigger assets, but it's been a great incubator. And what we've seen is that even in these bearish times, the protocol is working. USDX is stable and floating and kept stable by the under the hood dynamics that you really have to study. You have to be able to understand the code and the smart contract and the management design, and how the protocol keeps itself safe. And that's part of what we all are doing in the Telegram with Ouroboros, is we're educating ourselves and each other on this most magnificent innovation in DeFi that I think is about to take advantage of the stablecoin super cycle mantra, right? It's a narrative, right? But narratives are powerful, and it's probably the biggest one in terms of capital flow. And the reason why, like people are like, whoa, in a volatile world, you know, in like risk on assets, why is there an appetite for stable? Well, it's because in a volatile world, people are looking for stability, right? And so if there's a promise of stable, it's going to be like a safe haven. And, you know, and what I've learned and others have learned in DeFi is that, and I'm not the best at it, but I've learned from others where you use the volatility to the upside to stabilize. So we either sell or pull value out, however, and put it into a more stable asset on the way up, right? And so that's for me, the value of a stable asset in a volatile market is like it's a safe haven. Now, if I can also get yield, then we've got, you know, and that is the promise. It was the promise of last cycle Luna and UST, right? It was basically a 20% yield. Even though it was a floating yield, there was like a promise of about a 19 or 20% yield. And that was part of the problem. It was part of the design flaw of Luna and UST. I saw it early on, but I didn't care, right? It's sort of like pDAI. I see the design risk of pDAI, but I'm not buying it as a stable coin. I'm buying it as a speculation play. And if it gets to $1, great. You know, that would be cool. So anyway, okay, so that's ORX. It lives in the family of fully on chain. Like, I prefer USDX not touching like the centralized personally. ORX, same. I prefer a fully on chain ecosystem. That's just me. We don't need, in my opinion, centralized, you know, players. What we need is to be able to, you know, transact safely with fully audited, fully compliant source code and smart contracts, right? That's what I want as an investor and a user. I want to be able to interact with killer smart contracts and do my own banking on the blockchain, which is why I love Ouroboros. So I get an asset, I can buy Titan X. Right now it's at the bottom, and I can use it right away as a collateral asset. That's only if you like that idea. I love that idea. It's like having real estate and using the value that grows over time. Yeah, and not speculating too much on. So what I'm doing on Ouroboros is borrowing in safe ways, USDX, that's the stable coin, and I'm staking it on the Ouroboros protocol, and I'm making vesting ORX, right? At like 300, it's a floating return, but it's a reward. It's an incentive. It's an incentive for me to take my stable asset USDX, put it in another part of the protocol. We call it the backstop pool, and that backstop pool has about 200 million ORX that we in the DAO voted to supply as an incentive to build the backstop pool, which builds, it's one of the safety mechanisms in the Ouroboros platform. Okay, so yeah, when a stable asset becomes yield bearing, then I'm like, yes, right? And that's what the market wants. The market, like TradFi, not that we necessarily want all of TradFi institutions, but we do want capital coming in, and there's a lot of capital in traditional finance, in the bond markets, in this market, in that, and it's looking for ways on chain, right? And what it's looking for is yield. And I'm going to break yield down into, people talk about rewards. Yeah, but I see it as incentives, aligned incentives. I get an incentive from the protocol to stake my stable coin on the protocol, and I get that reward, that incentive, which is vesting ORX. I like that reward because it forces diamond hands. It forces long-term thinking. It encourages investment in the protocol because ORX, it takes 365 days for anytime I get a vesting, or it takes 365 days. I think I can claim it after 28 days, but if I'm getting a vesting ORX, I'm going to let it vest as long as I can, fully vest. So I get the full long-term value of it. So that's, it's not, it is, it's sort of an inflationary kind of yield. It's part of a deflationary asset, ORX, but we have voted through the Dow to give away what is a limited asset in exchange for the USDX that I stake, right? So that's what I would call a rewards incentive. Then there's, and it's typically associated with inflationary yield. Like we're creating the inflation. So we minted ORX by using Titanx, right? And then we're yeah, I just confused myself. So that's like rewards or inflationary incentives. The other is real yield. Real yield is when it comes from the fees, and those fees can come from services. So on ORX, there's a service fee when I create a loan. So that's one sort of fee, and that goes into the fee sharing bucket. That's, I consider real yield because it's the protocol generating fees. So there's those kind of fees from the protocol creating fees, and then there's like liquidity fees, LP providing fees. Now, that's what's coming next on Ouroboros. There is a new staking platform that's coming. It's in audit phase now, and I think when we get that staking platform, I think we're going to start to see both single-sided staking opportunities as well as LP providing, like a LP manager kind of thing. I don't really know exactly what it is, but I've seen screenshots and I love what I see. And anyone can see this who's in the Telegram. This is like part of what in Ouroboros we do, is that we use the Telegrams as a learning platform with each other, right? And I like that a lot. We're also doing that in the EROS Telegrams. These are learning communities. We're in it together, learning this stuff. And those are the two Telegram platforms that I like to participate in, because in Ouroboros, we're really focused on Ouroboros and learning and sharing and giving guidance and receiving guidance, and it's really great. Same thing with EROS. There's a collaborative container where we can communicate openly, which for me is very critical so that I know what's going on in a protocol that I'm involved with. Okay. Wow, 28 minutes. I tried to do this in 20. Okay, so yield bearing rewards. Yeah, I'm looking at my notes. Okay. So, okay, so that's like what's coming on Ouroboros. There's also this idea, I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't really understand it yet, but Ouroboros is being built to scale. Not only is a new staking platform coming to our Ethereum protocol, there's going to be a series of new deployments. I don't know when, I don't know how, I don't know exactitudes. I just know based on listening and seeing that the first of a number is coming. And I'm guessing it's going to be on Sonic, but I'm not sure because it's still confidential, and I'm good with that. I like that. It means to me that there's something brewing, and I know enough about business deals that they need to be done in confidence. They need to be done in privacy. The business alliances and collaborations and partnership deals really need to be negotiated and talked about in private, ways in order to build long-term success and what we call integrative agreements, where they integrate the interests of all parties. So that's why I respect when we still have confidentiality in this decentralized realm. And so what I can tell you is that it's coming. New deployments are coming to other blockchains. I'm thinking it's going to be Sonic is next, but we will see. I don't know. I would expect sometime this summer, the first of a number of deployments. And I think what we're going to see is whole protocol launches that somehow connect with the mothership of Ouroboros on Ethereum. Ethereum, I think, will always be the mothership for Ouroboros. It was where it was incubated. It's where, the ETH whales are. It's where big capital is coming in. And I see Ouroboros attracting a lot of attention, both on Ethereum and wherever it goes next. Sonic would be great because there's both a lot of competition, and for what Ouroboros and USDX have, there's very distinguished offer. There's a huge market for what Ouroboros is going to deliver to a new market, which is, think about it. It's basically minting of a stable coin using a collateral asset of small and medium-sized assets. They're all over, right? A place like Sonic, right? There's a huge marketplace. So we go from a perfect little incubator of the Titanx ecosystem, which is, both attracting Titanx and Ethereum people to it, right? And then let's say we go to Sonic and we're a magnet for the next stage of collateral asset that then can mint stable coins on that chain in that ecosystem. That's how I think it's going to work, but we'll see. Okay. I want to pivot a little bit to pDAI and why EROS is pairing with pDAI and why EROS is pairing with Bear. And yes, it has to do with this stablecoin narrative. Okay. So first of all, some of us in Titanx are migrating some of our Titanx and build on Titanx assets, not the whole contracts. It's a community migration of value to Pulse Chain, because first, it creates scarcity of our assets on Ethereum and Base, and it creates the opportunity to pair with strength on Pulse Chain. Because I and others in this movement of assets and value believe that it's good to have exposure to Pulse Chain for a variety of reasons. Okay. How I read it is Pulse Chain is at or close to the bottom. It can always go lower. And I see regulatory assurances in the US. The SEC lost its case against Richard Hart, Pulse Chain, Pulse X, and Hex. And as of July 5th, I think that's 6 days from today, there will be no more SEC oversight. I think until that day, if the SEC was going to do an administrative appeal, they could have done an administrative appeal, right? And so I'm sure the lawyers representing Pulse Chain have said wait until after July 5th. and then there will be regulatory certainty. And that's huge. It's huge for capital inflow, because if you notice, there's been a migration of capital out of Pulse Chain, and just like another other ecosystems where capital has drained out, it's just because of lack of faith, right? Capital flows where it's treated better and where there are better opportunities. And so what's happened in TitanX and PulseChain, which is why we're pairing these two, which are at the at or near the bottom, we're pairing them together because the pump is going to be huge. Okay, that's why we're doing it. That's why I'm doing it. And it helps to believe, right? I believe that, right? Whether or not it's becomes true and manifest in the material world, it is what it is. Some version of it will be true for me, right? I'm in at the bottom of Build on Titan X protocols and at the bottom of Pulse Chain and pDAI and Atropa and Bear. And so what happens after July 5th, right? And where pDAI fits in. So I see pDAI, I don't even think about pDAI as a stable coin or as a potential stable coin. If it happens, fine. I don't know enough about under the hood to know if it's going to happen, and I'm not getting involved in it. I like to listen to it because it's all speculation and it attracts attention. And basically pDAI has almost gone to zero twice and now has, rebounded heroically. And there's all this narrative again. It's like you can't kill it. It's just like EROS, you can't kill it. Now, pDAI is a whole different story. I don't know who's in charge of it, which makes it hugely speculative. So I like it as a speculative play. I like it because I bought it a month ago, right? And I'm pairing it with EROS. I bought EROS a month ago and I bought pDAI and I paired it together, right? In an LP. And I'm going to ride that together. I'm going to ride, if pDAI, it's like I was on yesterday with a thought leader, Coexistence Stephen, a thought leader in the Atropa ecosystem. And, he and his people are thinking that, 15 cents for pDAI is conservative, which is, they were telling me maybe a 40x from here. I have no idea. I have no idea. But what I do know is that that asset has been brutalized. I did really well on it in its first run up. And I believe I'm going to do really well, particularly when I'm pairing with EROS, right? And so EROS is our liquidity web token. It's the index token for TitanX pairing with select protocols and assets. And we've decided, only because we as a community effort, and there are individuals with pDAI, Bear, Atropa bags that want to pair it with EROS. And so I'm doing that too, right? So that's how pDAI, and I believe that, okay, so I don't think about pDAI as a stablecoin, but let me just play the stablecoin speculation game a little bit with pDAI, okay, how it might look, okay? I don't know about all the maker contracts, the MakerDAO contracts, and who's in charge of it, and if Richard Hart is backing, or if I don't know any of this stuff. But, and what I can imagine is, if there are powers, there's got to be at least one power it can't be just a decentralized effort at this stage. There's too many centralized players. The MakerDAO people, the extractor, the bugs, there's got to be, in my opinion, some central player that coordinates moving this asset towards what would be a floating stable coin, right? I think the idea is that pDAI becomes a censorship resistance, somehow automated with no human controls, stable-ish asset on the blockchain that maybe doesn't have to be only on Pulse Chain. Maybe Pulse Chain is the birthplace, right? It was Richard Hart's whole idea of, the bridge transforms a ERC20 into a PRC20. And so that's all this is. This is the DAI transformed to pDAI by the mirroring that Richard Hart and Pulse Chain did with, and the snapshots that they did with the Ethereum system state way back when. It feels like forever, but I think it's 4 years ago or something. So anyway, the narrative is for a fully automated, stable-ish coin that's censorship resistant and that somehow provides a stable coin for on-chain finance. We'll see. I have no idea. I'm not betting on it. I'm not betting against it. But if it were true that there's going to be a process working towards that, I could see this next cycle, like pDAI maybe hitting 3 cents or 15 cents or some random amount on the way to $1 and then totally capitulating again, right? Like, unless there's a centralized system that is in essence controlling the supply and who can dump it, because like if people can dump and impact the price, which I think people still can in pDAI, I don't really know. I haven't really looked at like how it gets minted, this is like why I'm like, I don't know, guys. You guys need to figure this out. But taking advantage of the stablecoin super cycle narrative, I believe will help the price of pDAI and help attracting people as a speculative investment. That's why I'm there. I'm not there to see it hit $1. I'm not there. I'm there because I'm looking for what on Pulse Chain has hit bottom that actually is going to do amazingly in this Pulse Chain bull run. And I believe, and so the ones that I'm interested in pairing my like Titanx assets in the form of EROS, right? EROS is the index token for all of the Titanx assets, right? And so I'm choosing to pair that EROS with some Titanx assets and with some Pulse Chain asset. And the ones that I'm choosing are, yes, some with Pulse and PulseX, just because we need those pairings, okay? And yes, with UFO, because I like that pairing, because I like PTGC and UFO. And so, I like that connection. And I feel like PTGC and UFO are blue chip potential assets on Pulse Chain. And then, other than that, I really like as potential blue chip assets, Atropa and Bear. Like pDAI, I will include in that, but I really like Atropa and Bear because they're the, I don't know, like the market making assets at the heart of the Atropa ecosystem, which is built on pulse chain, right? So yeah, so that's it. That's the stablecoin Genius Act version 2. Um, yeah, I like having these stable coins, but I like them. Like I'll use USDC to transact only in transit. I'll use it. I don't know. I just would prefer to hold a fully on-chain asset. At this point I prefer to hold USDX. It's still early, it's still new. And so I'm willing to hold some other stable coins just until it gets proven out at scale, which I believe is going to happen over the next 1, 2, 3, 4. Like Ouroboros, I think about into the future. Like I think about 2028 to 2030, right? I think that's like a 6-year cycle. That's how I think about Ouroboros. Like launched in 2024, I think about it in 2030. Not that I'm not going to get excited for what's coming in this coming bull scenario, um, which is huge. I'm very excited about it, and I will definitely be peeling off profits even in Ouroboros and putting it into stable coins, right? I'm going to use whatever profits I have to put into the stable coins and keep it on that ecosystem. I'll put it into USDX and stake that USDX, right? Or maybe use some of the USDX in another way that I haven't explored yet or hasn't happened yet. So yeah, I think that increasingly decentralized finance is going to be looking for real yield using, yes, volatile assets, but stable assets. And so any stable asset, and this is where eventually the regulators are going to start catching up. But in my opinion, and I'm not your lawyer, I'm my lawyer here. Yeah, in my opinion, we've got 3 to 5 years. I think probably by 2030, no, by 2028, about then, between 2028 and 2030, there will be some, and part of it is it's going to be very easy to audit on-chain finance by then. And I, unfortunately, there is going to be a race to privacy and to not just mixing protocols, but other technology that prevents full auditing and that gives privacy, right? And so that's one of the next battles for self-custody and privacy. This balance of like on-chain auditing, off-chain, it's a mess. It's just human financial systems, and it's a mess, which is why individual users I need to be educated about what's really going on under the hood and where the regulatory pressures are going to come and where the opportunities are, both to stay ahead of regulators, but when the regulators are paying attention to figure out how to work smart. Hey Chiz, how are you this fine morning? Right on, man, or woman. I'm doing well. How are you? What are you thinking? Trust. Any insights? Trusts? Because I mean, I'm gonna do this for the next 11 minutes because I said I would do it for half an hour, but it turned into almost an hour. Yeah, I'm doing great, man. I'm just thankful for the peace here. Oh, yeah. Little shout out to anyone that's not feeling that peace right now. I know there's a lot. Yeah. But one of the things I've learned, okay, so stablecoin, let's not get lost in peace and war realm. We're in the realm of self-custody privacy. Yeah, exponential growth. Like what I'm looking to do right now is to grow the value. Like what I've been doing for the last 18 months is growing. Like I've been buying assets at the bottom, whether or not it's through mining or minting or auctions or off the market. You know, it's like buying low as opposed to buying the green. And the dollar value is less than I had thought it would be, but so what? That's life. It's also been a very strange Ethereum cycle. It's been a very powerful Bitcoin cycle, which makes a lot of sense to me. It's been a slow, which this is what I was guessing, because I remember the first BTC ETF year, the last cycle, the first time that Bitcoin had an ETF, it was acting like Ethereum's acting now. And it's mostly because there are these big players. Once you've got Fidelity and BlackRock, all these huge players like ETFs, like you've just got all this, like, you know, market makers making the market now for themselves and their customers, right? And this is why a lot of DeFi people think this could be the last exponential growth cycle. I don't know. I think there, like every cycle, there's going to be a huge die-off. Huge die-off. There's way too many. All this tokenization, like it's fine to tokenize some asset that has a value, but to tokenize something that's fluff is meaningless, right? Like one of the things eventually I'll want to tokenize, but the technology and the market isn't ready for it, is tokenize a best practice. Tokenize a smart machine that we've been building, for example, to teach people how to read. If one has the dyslexic mind or an autistic mind or whatever the brain dynamic is, well, everyone wants to be able to read in whatever language it is. Reading is fundamental, right? And our brains and how we educate are not set up. Too many kids are not being taught right to read. And so what might it look like if we actually tokenize the best practice, right? That's like tokenizing a real world asset, which is something like a best practice to teach someone to read, or the best practice for growing yams in Jamaica without pesticides, but with all sort of people and human friendly, like, nutrients that prevents pests and fungal stuff, and so that helps us to grow food. And maybe a best practice for how do we get clean water, and a best, so like those are the kinds of things we want to start tokenizing. Not just real estate. Yes, tokenize real estate, get it on the blockchain, ease the closing process. That makes a lot of sense, right? But there are other things that we could, and so over tokenization of fluff is just that. It's trying to take money from, you know, gamblers. And so what we want to be doing is looking under the hood and start treating ourselves not like there is a high risk, high return opportunity here, but it's not throwing dice. It's not shooting craps. It's not, no. It's more like being a skilled poker player, if you want a gambling metaphor. That's why everyone wants casinos on chain. I'm like, yeah, you don't want to promote gambling. What you want to promote is like wealth, right? Gambling, no. What we want to do is for a certain percent of my like assets, I'm going to put on chain in speculative assets, right? And I'm going to put them in stable coins, right? On chain that I can actually make real yield or deploy them to inflationary yield that I like, right? Ah, yeah. All right. I think I'm done ranting about stable coins and let's see, ORX. I love ORX. USDX, I love USDX. pDAI, love pDAI. EROS, love EROS. Bear, I love Bear. So one thing I learned about Bear, again, Bear is a speculative asset. Teddy Bear, it's the OG Bear on Pulse Chain. I basically had a moon bag of Bear, pDAI, Atropa from the last run when Atropa, pDAI, and Bear were running up. I was taking profits, right, and putting them into stable coins. But I kept a moon bag of all of them, and now I paired them. And I bought more Bear and more not a lot, just a little bit, a little bit. This is the dust strategy. This is gather dust and put them in 100, 1000x potential in a lottery ticket investment. That's what pDAI EROS Bear is for me. And I'll include Lotus, Eden, JakeX, and all the other bots that aren't a lot of dollar value, but for speculative potential are going to do very well. So this is my dust strategy, which is putting small amounts of capital into highly speculative, high return, 1000x opportunities, right? Bear is like Bear, like I asked Coexist's Steven yesterday, I was on stream with him, asking him what's the utility for Bear. I just wanted to know what it was, because I see Bear and pDAI and Atropa as speculative plays right now. I'm just taking little bits of capital and speculating on them growing and becoming stable. Right now, because of the developer and how that's been happening, it's been very unstable, right? But I see it as a strong speculative play. And Bear, I learned yesterday, is central to the ecosystem. Yes, it's a cozy meme that I like. I think it's a deflationary asset. I can't assure that. This is part of the challenge. These are not open source contracts, right? I can't really look under the hood. So it's a speculative play, but at least theoretically, given the hints, is that Bear is what backs Treasury Bill. Treasury Bill is another one of these Atropa creations in their decentralized financial system that's being built. And I can't speak with any credibility about any of that, but I'm learning because I'm pairing EROS with Bear, pDAI, and Atropa, and so I want to understand. So Bear, speculation, it's about a $10 million market cap. I remember is at 60 when I was selling it or something like that. So it's 6x from here. Probably with adoption and with Pulse Chain doing well, it could 100x, right? It could be a $1 billion meme if it's the meme for Pulse Chain for some reason, like it grows with the Atropa ecosystem, and if pDAI actually becomes a speculative giant, Bear could kill it, right? We don't know. This is where speculation rules. But for the lottery plays, I like it. I like pDAI, I like Bear, I like Atropa, and I like it paired with EROS because that's my speculative play on the on the PTGC clone realm, right? It's a PTGC fork, but fully autonomous, no humans involved. I like it. Cap supply, hyper deflationary, diamond hands crew that that people love to hate it, But with EROS, like all there is love, right? It's fully automated. It's on the blockchain. It's deflationary. No matter what we humans do, it's going to just keep on working the LP web. And now that we paired it with strength on Pulse Chain and we're in the process of migrating over value from Titanx into the ecosystem, I really like it. And I'm personally pairing it with pDAI and Bear in particular. All right. Peace out, y'all. Have a great Sunday. Yeah, Sacred Sunday. I like to do from Friday sundown until Sunday sundown sacred time. I just like have 48 hours of like time stops. And yeah, I show due deference to all the people that like really hold those days, and I just extend them 48 hours. All right, peace out. I'm gonna go carve wood. I'm carving Ouroboros today. By the way, these totems, EROS is in there, ORX is in there, USDX is in there. Bear is not in this one, but it is in another one. pDAI I haven't carved in, but maybe I'll do that. I'm not heavily invested enough to like if I'm making a carving, with few exceptions, sometimes I make carvings just as gifts. But if I'm really carving a carving and talking about it, like Ouroboros, I'm really committed. Same thing with EROS. I carved EROS over a year ago, and that's why when it came back to me, I'm like, right on. I'm going to work it. I'm going to work for my EROS bags. I'm going to grow my EROS bags and work for them, and that's what we are doing. That's why I'm here. I got challenged by my team to come out and talk. And I was like, cool, as long as I get to do whatever. They were like, do whatever you want. You're free. Talk about whatever you want. They told me to keep it short and sweet, and so I'm not doing that right now, but that's all good. All right. Have a great Sunday. Peace out. I need to go carve, or I want to go carve.